Hey, I'm Jordan. This is Ohio River Outdoors. We're the Getting Bit Fishing Team. And this is your Ohio River Outdoors Bait of the Week. Let's get right into it. So before we get started, we're going to need a few things here from the store. So I'm going to attach you to the chest mount and we're going to walk around and we're going to grab all the things we need for this drop shot. So let's go. Let's see if we can get Doug mic'd up while we do this. Hey Doug! There he is. I'm doing a video on drop shots and I want you to show me some drop shot stuff, Doug. So I'm doing a video on drop shots. You're on camera now. Why don't you go show me what kind of line?
Let's go.
Okay.
As you know, there's several different types of lines.
My preferred is the cigar.
Mine is Samurai.
Okay, so why the Samurai?
I've had really good luck with Samurai. It don't fray out. It's after you get done fishing and stuff with it, you can tie it to the bump of your truck, stretch it out, take all the kinks out, whatever. And I've had nothing but.
Which one do you want me to try for the drop shot, Doug?
I would try probably the 7 pound. I usually throw 8. I'm out of 8, but 7 pound would probably be a good one.
Okay.
So
here it is. Now I need some hooks, Doug.
We can do that. So on hooks, I usually throw Gamakatsus or Trokars. I really like the Gamakatsus and the 2/0s with the weed guards and stuff on them.
Okay, so I'm going to do one with the weed guard, and I'm going to grab
one without
the weed guard. Now we need some weights, Doug. What kind of weights do you use on the?
When weights come, I use nothing but my own brand of weights.
That's right.
What size? What size are we using on the river,
Depending
guys?
on how
He's trying to sell these things. He wants to point us in the direction that gets the most of them sold. Okay, there we go.
You want it to fall fast, you want it to fall slow. I usually fall, kind of slow, so.
Okay, well, I think the 316 will do that for us. Now why don't you show us your flatnose worms?
All kinds of flatnose worms.
Oh, we've seen the selection. So, what color would you be throwing on the river, Doug?
They're smelt.
There you go, boys and girls.
Smelt, green pumpkin. Can't go wrong with either one of them.
Okay, and finally, Doug, I guess
River, as you know, is tough.
it is
You've
tough.
probably caught more on a drop shot than I have.
Yeah, it's a pretty tough river sometimes. So, Doug, I'm going to show these people how to put this together.
You put it together.
Okay, so Doug's hooked us up with everything we need from the store, from our 7 pound Samurai fluorocarbon to our bait of the week, the Berkley Flatnose Worm in both green pumpkin and smelt, our Gamakatsu 2/0 drop shot hooks, our Ohio River Outdoors tungsten, and me, I guess. So let's dive right into this. We're going to cover the time of year we use this, what the water conditions are that we're looking for. We're going to talk about water depth. We're going to talk about retrieve. I'm even going to show you how I tie it up, hook it up. We're going to go into everything. This YouTube video is designed to be more in depth. If you guys are coming because you saw us on Facebook or TikTok, this video is going to be a lot more in depth about how we use this bait to try to help you get more hookups in your boat this year. So about the time of year that I use this. For this bait here, I don't really look at water temps as much as I do time of year. Time of year and water clarity are the two big things for a drop shot to me. So time of year, I typically start using a drop shot right in the middle of the spawn. I will say that the type of drop shot I use in the spawn is a lot different than the drop shot I use in my late spring and summer patterns. And I'll use it right up until the fall starts to cool down the water temps, whenever you start seeing the lakes turn over and flip. Whenever the water temps start to cool off, the leaves start to turn, that's when I quit using it. So to a degree I use water temps, but for the most part, once I start using it, I'm not looking at water temps daily trying to figure out if this is still going to be something I use, right? So the two types I use, let's talk about the spawn pattern first, and then we'll go into the summer pattern, which is the longer pattern. The big difference is during the spawn, and I'll tell you why here in a second, I use a shorter leader length to my sinker. So in the spawn, right, your bass make beds. They plan on having eggs there. They're getting really protective. Whenever they start laying eggs, and you have both the buck and the female in there, especially the female because she's the one we really want, right? She's the bigger one. You can throw a jerkbait over top of it to try to get them to react. You can throw a jig in there. Your big thing in bed fishing is trying to get the fish to get angry enough to move your bait off of the bed and out of the bed. Whenever you see them flare up, that's whenever you set the hook, right? Well, a drop shot is perfect for that because it's able to agitate the bass more. With a drop shot, like this one I have rigged up here, as you can see, I have a really short leader to my tungsten sinker. A lot of times I'll use a bait that's a little bit chartreuse on to maybe try to mimic a bluegill, or I'll just go straight green pumpkin. But you throw this into the fish's bed, like so. I don't know which camera you can see this on, but you throw this right into the fish's bed and let that hover right in front of that fish. It agitates them so much that they have to react, and it's a great bait that you can just throw in there and leave in there. You can, once you drag it in, I usually throw it a little bit outside of the fish's bed. I drag it in, I pull it up, and you can just watch it agitate the fish as it's trying to think about what it's going to do. And as soon as you see it flare up and touch your bait, set the hook, it's yours. I will say whenever it comes to bed fishing, I'll usually use a little bit heavier of a line because the fish aren't as frantic. This isn't as much of a finesse fishing tactic as it is a bed fishing tactic. So to reduce loss, I'll go up to 12-pound fluorocarbon for this. Now, whenever it comes to my summer pattern, I'm still using the same green pumpkin colors. I'm still using black and blue, still using this smelt color. The big difference whenever I move into the summer is going to be my leader length. So, excuse me. So, for those of you who have good electronics, who have live scope, stuff like that, I do adjust my leader length a lot to where I think I see the fish at in the water column, right? I try to be a little bit above them, especially for smallmouth, because smallmouth like to bite above. With my electronics, I typically try to adjust accordingly, right? But just like me 2 years ago, before I had the great electronics, you couldn't tell exactly where the fish were in the water column. I will tell you that this length right here, about 12 to 18 inches, works great all the time. Honestly, whenever you're fishing shallower, if you're fishing in, let's say, less than 5 foot of water, stick to a 12-inch leader. If you're fishing in more of a 10-foot water, go to an 18-inch leader. If you don't have the electronics, just adjust according to depth. It's not that big of a deal. You're still going to get the bites, but I think it does help a little bit whenever you have the electronics to get a few more of those pressured fish if you can get it right in their face. But that's not the end all. That's not exactly how you have to do it. 12 to 18-inch leader. So what's the difference between the spawning pattern and the summer pattern? It's pretty obvious. Whenever the spawn's over, you have a few more weeks before the water gets really hot into your spring where the fish are still biting really good on power fishing. Crankbaits, buzzbaits, spinnerbaits, jigs. I don't go directly into the next method of drop shotting. What I do is whenever the bite starts to get harder or get tougher as the water temps start to warm up, whenever we really get into those dog days of summer, that's when I go to this bait. Or if I'm at Lake Erie, I will say at Lake Erie, everything I say does not apply. This bait is fire 100% of the time at Lake Erie, all the time. Anywhere else in the world that I go to, whenever you get into your dog days of summer, the water temps are well over 80 degrees at this point. The spawn is done, went and passed, and those fish have moved into their summer pattern, which they're going to be there for a good long time now. That's when I'll put a drop shot in the rod locker on the deck of my boat. Typically, it's always on the deck of my boat, right beside of a wacky rig, a small swim jig, small chatterbait, because I still do like to try to finesse fish a little bit, you know, some kind of pop-ar or something like that. But 99% of the time, you're going to find this exact rig right here on the deck of my boat. So when the water temps get hot and we're past the mayfly hatch, spawn's over, all that stuff. The shad spawn's over, which this can also work good in the shad spawn. This can also work good for just live scoping, but we're not talking about that right now. Whenever we get into the warmer water temps, it's summer, summer's here to stay, that's when I pull this out. Water color, clearer water. Like I've said before, this is mostly a clear water tactic. The fish have to be able to see the bait. It's not making a lot of noise, it's not real aggressive. If the fish can't see it, they're really not going to come to it. I know some of these scented baits, like the flatnose worm, you might be able to draw some in, but honestly, if I get past a slight stain, I don't really know how to describe it. If I can't see this thing more than 6-7 inches in the water, I really don't throw it. So, you're in summer, it's not raining a whole lot, you have clearer water, Where do I fish it at? I fish it everywhere. Everywhere except in heavy cover, because it obviously doesn't drag through heavy cover very well. But something like this right here, I look for current on the main lake or the main river. I look for a lot of current. I don't really worry so much about depth. Typically in the summer, I don't fish outside of the 10 depth range. So I look for current, I look for eddies, I look for rock breaks, and I look for rock. If you can find a lot of big chunk rock, that is great. If you can find a lot of submerged rock, that's even better. I try to fish this around rock, around transitions, and even if you can find wood that you're not necessarily going to get hung up in, submerged wood, this works great. And you're going to lose a lot of your slip weights, but even around wood, this bait works absolutely amazing. Whenever I get into my summer pattern though, that's when I switch to my lighter line, like the 7-pound Samurai fluorocarbon. I always use fluorocarbon. The reason why, again, this is a sight bait. This is a finesse tactic. The fish are looking at this longer, they're not biting it off of a reaction, so I want something that looks a lot more natural. So whenever you have a higher grade, lighter fluorocarbon like what you see there, not only is this bait more nimble, not only does it give it more action in the current, but it's also a smaller diameter, so it's harder for the fish to see. It gives it a more natural look, it helps you bring it through the water column better, it helps you get more hookups. Just make sure you have somebody with a net. I will say, honestly, I have boat flipped so many 2.5, 3-pound smallmouth with 8-pound test, 7-pound test, 10-pound test. You can do it. The biggest thing I would say is if you're going to do it, make sure you retie every few fish, because after a while this is going to start to get brittle. My retrieve, it varies, but I have 2 major retrieves that I go with whenever it comes to a drop shot. The first retrieve, let's say you're around a nice rock bank or you're on a point somewhere where you know there's fish, I'll throw it out to where I think the juice is, right, the best area, and I just let it sit there. I don't get in a hurry whenever it comes to fishing this bait. This isn't a bait that you're going to power fish. There is power shotting, I guess is what you would call it. I'll get into that here in a second, but for the most part, throw it out there and just let it sit. I usually start off with not giving it a whole lot of action. I don't sit there and flip the rod like this, especially if you're fishing in a lot of current. A lot of time that current's already given this bait, you know, if it's just hanging there, it's already given this bait some sort of little slight action like that that looks like a shad just suspended there in the water column. And you'll get a lot of baits doing that. I'm not going to say it's the most fun way to search for fish, but whenever you get on that bite, especially if you can get into a good school of them, man, is it a fun bite, because once they're on, they're on. After that, I just slowly drag it to me. If I don't get any bites, I will start to do a slight action, but I don't get real aggressive with it. I do, because what you think is a small hop in the water is 5 and 6 foot actually. So when you're doing this, you're moving this a lot further than you think you are. But if I'm not getting bites, I will give it a slight action to the tip of my rod, right? And I bring it through what I consider the juice. I bring it through to where I think it's not really giving a good presentation anymore. I reel it back up and I throw it back out. The other way I like to use this time of year, live scoping. This is a great bait that you can run around with the live scope on. You can pan over, you can see the fish, you can throw this down to it, you can watch it go down, you can watch the fish engulf it, right? I guess the third big tactic would be power shotting. So whenever you're power shotting, the only difference is I upgrade my sinker weight. This here I think is a 3/16 ounce. I upgrade my sinker weight to something heavier, like a 3/4 or something like that. That way it makes quick bottom contact and you can drag it to you really quick. So those are the 3 ways I do it outside of the spawn pattern. The final thing I really think that we need to go over with y'all, I'm gonna clear up my workspace a little bit, is how I tie it up. So when I tie this up, I go with a polymer knot, and I go with tungsten weight like this that has a little slip on it. That way, you know, as you're pulling on it, it can just slide. If your sinker gets stuck, you're not going to be stuck retying, it'll slide right off. So there's really not a whole lot into tying this up. I'm going to go into it though. I want to give you a little bit of a close-up. That way you can see how I tie my polymer knot. So the first thing we're going to need is our hook. So we got a few more there than I need. But there you go. That right there is the Gamakatsu. First thing we're going to do here is go I usually start, I go down through, right, facing upward, like so. Right. Make sure you give yourself a lot of tail here. Okay? You're going to need it for your sinker later. So, pull through to get to this point right here. Wish I could make this smoother for y'all, but honestly better at this in a boat. So now we get to this point where we have our hoop, we have our hook, and we have our tag end. So now we're going to take our hoop, spin it around. Now we're at this point right here. We have our tag end like this. We cinch it down a little bit. We bring our hook through the big hoop. Bring it back. Get it snagged a little bit on your skin. Then we're going to pull it through, and right about here, I wet my knot. So, there you go. There's that. Now, after I get that rigged up, I will take my tag end and I will run it back through my eyelet. Just like this, right here. Pull it down. Sometimes it'll be a little difficult to get hold of. Pull it down, right there. I bring it all the way down through. You'll see why here in just a second. Bring it all the way down through. That way, you can get a more natural presentation with your hook. This one here is sitting kind of crooked. When you go down through like that, it helps your hook sit upward. So I'm going to try to correct this a little bit. Okay. So now, back to me over here. What we're going to do is this part right here, right? So I typically just measure it out to my elbow right there, and that's right about where I'm going to cut it. That's just a quick way of measuring for me. Then I grab my tungsten weight, my High River Outdoors tungsten weight. I just slide. I'll go back to do. That's not good for a fish habitat. So set your hook aside. I'll go back over to this camera here. Just slide right up through there like that. Oop, I missed it. Slide right up through there like that. There you go. And then I just trim that little end off right there. So there you have it. So now, back to this camera. Down through, and you'll see why here in just a second. Bring it all the way down through. That way, you can get a more, we're at this point here where you have your leader, which might be a little bit longer than I like. You have your hook, and then you have it going to your rod. Now you just need to grab your flatnose worm or whatever worm you're using. This doesn't have to be a flatnose worm. You can even do a wacky rig, which by the way works great. Take a Senko, tie this up with a wacky rig with a little bit bigger of a hook. It works great. But anyways, so now what we're going to do is we're just going to nose hook our flatnose worm right there, like that, and there you have it. So, like I said, it's sitting a little crooked here. I would retie this in a tournament, but anyways, you get the idea of it. You'll sit up in the water column about like this. It's a little bit easier when there's water there helping to float. Onto your rod. There's your setup. So, I'm Jordan with the Getting Bit Fishing Team. Thanks for joining us here at High River Outdoors today. Thanks to all of our great sponsors, Armstrong, Jan Dills, Ellenboro Floors, Wood Heating and Cooling, Seven Rivers Marina. Thank you all for everything you do for us. Make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe button. We appreciate it, and have a great day.